sippers, welcome to this episode of the Tea With Me podcast with me, and I've said me too many times there, Shane Todd. I also don't know why I said my own name there like I'm some sort of news anchor, but the main thing is we're sipping, okay? We're sipping it up. I've got this mug that says Island Art Centre in Lisburn. That is where I play on my tour, and obviously other venues as well, not just there. That made it sound like my tour is just one venue, which would absolutely not constitute a tour. But they have their own mugs, and I love that. And I love it when I go, can I have one? And I love it when they go, yeah. And I go, how many can I get? And they say, probably just one. And I go, can I have 5? And they say 2. And that's exactly what happened there. And I enjoy that. I enjoy mugs. You know what I mean? Because this podcast, it is, let me turn my phone off. This podcast is about tea. You know what I mean? It is about just a chat with a tea, whether it's me having a chat with a guest or me having a chat with the listeners or just me talking to myself with a tea. But I enjoy mugs. I collect mugs and I'm building up a wee bit of a collection. If you I was just thinking about this there now. If you have a mug, if you're like a business or you own a company or whatever, I don't know, or you live in some bizarre part of the world like the Falkland Islands or Cushendall, what you can do is send us a mug to teawithmepodcast@gmail.com. Oh no. Oh, how long have I been in quarantine for? I'm like, hey, mail that to me. Alright, what's your address? teawithmepodcast@gmail.com. Put a stamp on it. I mean, yes, I'm now acutely aware that I've said it, that you can't send physical things to an email, but also my asthma's back a bit there as well. I'm wheezing very heavily. But yeah, what I'm saying is, if you want like your mug to feature on this podcast, one of the best tea related podcasts in County Down, get in touch with this teawithmepodcast@gmail.com and we'll give you an address to send it to, because we've got we're in the process of getting a mailing address set up, so you can do that. Yeah, the Jamie Dornan episode of the podcast went out on Wednesday there, and what a reaction to it. Thanks very much to everyone who listened, watched it. I mean, I feel like a lot of people watching and listening were for him. And, I've just got to accept that, although I haven't fully accepted it. But yeah, I mean, the podcast went from, I think previously to this, our top position in the iTunes chart for UK had been 130 or something, maybe even more. And that episode got us into the top 40. And that was bittersweet for me. It was sweet because unreal, the podcast hasn't been going long, and I was really happy with that. But it's bitter because I really mugged myself off, and I know a lot of listeners that listened to the previous incarnation of this podcast, which was the Shane Toddcast, loved hearing stories of me getting mugged off, and I've done it majorly here. Bear in mind, I full-time do comedy and there's no gigs anymore for the foreseeable, so let's just say the money toad here isn't, you know what I mean? His lily pad has got a bit smaller, okay? His stocks have depleted a little bit. So bear in mind, I'm watching what I spend at the minute. I make a big call in the Tea With Me podcast WhatsApp group just before the Jamie Dornan episode went out. I said to Big Mike and producer Dan, I said, if this episode gets us into the top 40, and again, that was ridiculous. That's like saying, if I win the lottery, because I didn't think that was going to happen. So I was like, if this gets us into the top 40, I'll take us away when lockdown is over and, international flights are back on. I'll take us away to Spain to do an episode of the Tea With Me podcast. And those two motherfuckers sat on Chartable, which is like where you can see where podcasts are on the charts. They sat refresh. Alright, I don't know if these two guys have left the country, because that website crashed just with them. I'm pretty sure Big Mike ordered himself an extra laptop from Amazon on Prime just so he could have two hands, You know, it's like he's playing the decks. He was just checking those charts. And I think the podcast went to 33 in the UK podcast charts, something like that anyway. And the text was very quick. You know, what shorts do we need to pack? So fuck those guys, but I'll take them away, all right, because they deserve it. Because it's class to get a podcast into the Apple podcast chart like that. I was buzzing, and I was just happy with the episode as well. You know, the Jimmy Dornan one is a bit nervous doing it. I think it turned out well, and I might ask him if he wants to do another one. You know, I mean, lockdown might end next week and he go, fuck no, I'm never doing the podcast again. Or lockdown could keep going and they go, alright, may as well. You know, who knows. But we're going to go to, the plan anyway, is to go to Spain to do an episode of the Tea With Me podcast down the line. Because if you're not already following this account, there's a guy called Jerry Flynn on Twitter who used to play in the Irish League and was an Irish League manager. This is football, obviously, we're talking about. And he's been doing this thing every day out there. He films it just outside in his garden, where he tells like stories from back in the day of Irish League football. So it's like real life Keith Cruz stuff. You know, the character I do, Keith Cruz, is all these spoof stories about himself and local football. Jerry's stories are real and they're fucking hilarious. So he's putting them up every day. People are really, really into it. And I sent him a message saying, Jerry, when all this lockdown ends, I'd love to come out to Murcia and do an episode. He calls it Murcia, I've noticed in his videos. I don't love that, but that's fine. You know, each to their own. I said I'd love to come out and do an episode of the podcast, just because I know there's going to be a lot of people who watch and listen to this that aren't into football, and I wouldn't. The stories he tells are so funny and niche that you don't need to be into football to appreciate them. So I'd love to just go out, chat to him about his career, you know, living in Spain, all that. I think you'd find him a real interesting character, and he's very funny as well. So he was straight back to me. He said, like, yep, come on out and we'll do it and get a few beers. So that's when I text Dan and Big Mike and I said, look, if we get into the top 40, I'll fly us out there. I mean, not literally, like I'll not pilot the plane or charter a jet, but if we can get decent flights in Skyscanner, I'll get us out there. So that's happening. It's going to be a Tea With Me episode in Spain. And guys, I have a feeling I won't be drinking tea in that episode, if you know what I mean. Cider, whatever. That was a real slurp there. I apologise. It's been a big day for me. It's been a big lockdown day for me. I'll talk about this more on the podcast next week. Oh no, fuck it, I won't, because I'm not doing one by myself for another while. But I painted the fence today. There you go, the fence in my garden. Never have I done any sort of painting before, whether that be Picasso type stuff or DIY, but I just took a real notion today. We have some paint that we have had for like outdoor painting, like just a brown, like a shit brown. I'm pretty sure it said Ron Seal shite brown. And you know what? The big man just went at it. And I was doubling up on the coats, 2 coats, not on me, you know what I mean? Not like a parka and a bomber jacket, but that's such shit dad banter, isn't it? I'm not even a dad yet, but yeah, I was painting away, and I've been doing that for the last couple of hours, and you feel class. You feel class because I'm painting away. I see the guy that lives over the back of me, and of course I hit him with a bit of chat. He's like, alright, how's it going? He didn't want any more conversation, and I said, I don't think I'll be getting any work as a painter and decorator after this. Now, that's funny because it's off the cuff banter. There's not much to go on. We're in lockdown. Also, I'm deprecating. I'm making a joke there that like I'm not very good at this, but he couldn't see the wall because the wall I was painting, phenomenal. It's unreal. And if I get this intro and outro to the podcast done in time, I might go back out. Even though my wife said, just take it easy for the night. Just relax. We'll watch a bit of TV. I really want to go back out to it because it's class. Because back in the day, whenever I was a child, my Uncle Michael used to amuse me when I went to his house by saying, do you want to paint my house? Now, whenever you're 4 or 5, that's a lot of responsibility. But I said, yes, I would love to do that. Like painting a house, the outside of a house. He said, let me get you some magic paint Now, turned out years later, it was water. Alright, the man lied to me. But I thought, because obviously if you put water on a paintbrush and paint the wall, it goes a bit darker. I thought, this guy's letting me paint this house. Turned out it wasn't. So this now, years later, like 25, 30 years later, is my, what would you say, like, is my revenge. I'm finally getting to actually paint things, and it feels good. So if anybody needs anything painted, get an actual painter decorator to do it, because I'm not cut out for it. Honestly, I don't even have that big of a fence, and my hand like seized up and I fainted a bit. But it's been fun. I'm just gonna do more DIY. I'm gonna do more stuff outside the house. I feel like I might do like a mosaic. I might do a water feature. Might do an indoor pool, outdoor pool. At the very least, a gnome. You know, what people don't really do gnomes anymore, do they? I find gnomes extremely creepy. Like, here's the thing: having one gnome is really creepy when you just see a gnome by itself in someone's garden, and then having like 30 gnomes is creepy. But anything in between, sort of like dead on. It's dead on. I feel like we should get a tea with me gnome. I mean, it in no way ties in with the podcast, but I would just like it. The more merch, the better. Speaking of merch, we are gonna have mugs and stuff like that, and maybe do t-shirts down the line. That's something we're chatting about in our Tea With Me WhatsApp group, so keep an eye out for that. And before I get into this podcast, let me plug the Patreon, which is patreon.com/teawithmepodcast. On that, you can get a load of bonus episodes that only are available to the Patreon people. Patreon people, weird to call them that. It sounds like some sort of gang who aren't very hard. But we just are going to bring I was going to say drop an episode, but, you know, look at me. We're going to release an episode on Monday with Kieran Bartlett that was recorded a couple of months ago. Very funny. Very funny. So you can check that out and loads more. Also, if you want to rate and review the podcast on Apple Podcast, that'd be really sweet. That helps us go up the chart. This week's episode of Tea With Me is with Wayne McCullough. He's my guest. Wayne McCullough is a former world champion boxer. He's been living in between Las Vegas and California now for, I think he said 20 years when we got chatting. I chatted to him a couple of weeks ago when lockdown kind of just started, and I was just about to go to LA, and I was maybe going to interview him out there, but I ended up having to do it while I was in my spare room, and he's in lockdown out in Vegas. So we had a real interesting chat. Loads of stuff I didn't know about Wayne. Like, whenever I was a kid, I remember him fighting like Prince Nassim and these household names, and I can't say I knew a lot about him personally. You know, I just knew him as this world champion boxer. But we got talking about loads of interesting stuff, including the fact that he was boxing for the Irish Olympic team, and he was a working class guy from the Shankill, which is pretty exclusively Protestant. I mean, that sounds like a fragrance. By Givenchy, exclusively Protestant. But that was really interesting to chat about that, and I guess I was really keen to know what it was like as well coming up during the Troubles as a boxer, you know, and the fact that boxing's so big now. But it was different back then, and we were chatting about a few personal things as well, and what he's up to now. Wayne, as we talk about, trains Brian Callen, who's one of my favourite comedians. So I think you'll enjoy this episode. I don't know loads about boxing. I do really like boxing, but I'm not like an enthusiast about it or an anorak or anything. So I don't think if you're not into boxing, don't let that put you off, because Wayne's a really interesting guy, very funny, very, very kind with his time, like everyone that I interview. So just an absolute gentleman. I had a lot of fun chatting to him, and I think you guys are going to enjoy this. This is the Wayne McCullough episode of the Tea With Me podcast. Wayne, this podcast is called Tea With Me, so it's kind of where I have a cup of tea with the listeners, bring a guest on, all that kind of thing. Yes, that's exactly what I was going to ask you. Do you drink tea, or because you live stateside now, do you have fancy teas?
Do I drink tea? I've been here 27 years. 27 years. And I drink, here we go. I've always had, I'm not going to give them the brand name out of it. You know what I mean? I've always had.
Yes. Well, you just can't go wrong. You just can't go wrong with it.
I've got about 400. At the minute, my friends from Scotland came over before Christmas, and they brought me over 400 tea bags. And
Well,
I've always drank
that's a friend.
tea. Yeah, tea from back home it's always way better, stronger. The American tea is like water. You know what I mean?
Anytime I
So
go out there and ask for a tea, they give me an Earl Grey. When I specify
yes,
I want a breakfast tea, they still give me an Earl Grey.
get the orange peaky tea over here. It's called orange peaky. It sounds like orange, but it tastes like back home. The Earl Grey and the black or the breakfast one doesn't taste the same. It's orange peaky is the best one over here. But if you've got your own tea bags is the best anyway.
I want to sort of go back a wee bit with you in terms of career and stuff, but before I do, living out there in America now, do you feel like, do you still keep a connection with home in terms of products and stuff you buy? Because I feel like if I moved away, I would be finding those shops that have all the local stuff.
Belfast is always in my heart, believe me. Look, here's an example right here. Oh, look, there's a Las Vegas clock and a Belfast clock.
Oh, class.
Right? And Belfast has always been, people think you go away, you forget. And even here, my daughter made this here. It's like home, 93, we came to Vegas. There's Northern Ireland. There's Nevada we live in, and we lived in California for 5 years as well. So I was a little, you know what I mean? You always never forget where you come from.
Well, I've got to say, for that long away, I think a lot of people's accent just totally goes. But
you're going to be talking like this. You're going to talk like this tomorrow. You're going to talk like this. This one here, here's one here. Look at that, Belfast City Hall on the wall.
Yeah, there's usually goths on those benches though, but I think they've got it on a nice day when they're not there. And
there's pictures of Belfast, the coast. No, my accent has changed a little bit, but it's not like I've seen people come over here for 2 weeks and they're speaking American.
Yeah. Do you
know what I mean? And people make fun of my accent. I don't care. It doesn't bother me.
Do you find that when you're speaking to people from home, your accent gets way more stronger?
Oh, yeah.
Naturally. But when you're with Americans all the time, I guess.
It does, but your accent, you've got a more polite Belfast accent.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean? Mm-hmm. My wife.
This is just for stage, though.
I know my wife was from over in like East Belfast, Woodstock Road area, Craigie Road. Her accent was different from mine, and I was from the Shankill Road area. Yeah. So mine was like, "What about you, kiddo? Where are you going to go here? What about you?" Well, so not understanding. For the first couple of years I was here, nobody could understand a word I said.
Yeah.
My coaches couldn't even understand me. And I had to talk. Then I started talking. I just slowed my words down a little bit and started talking to them, and then when you slow your words down a bit, you get used to it. Like the movie.
Yes.
You've seen The Devil's Own with Brad Pitt. Have you seen that?
Yep.
Well, he has a Belfast accent, but he slowed it way down for people to understand it.
I find that massively with when I do stand up in the States, that we speak naturally so fast, and I was almost moving on to the next subject.
You said you do stand up like comedian?
Yeah. So that's my main thing.
Do you know Brian Callen?
That is one of the things I was going to ask you. So
Brian can fight like a mother hubbard. He can fight. I taught him how to fight for real. He spars. He can really fight. Believe me.
So Brian's
he's so funny. I went to see him one time.
Absolutely. Live. Brian Callen's podcast, Fighter and the Kid, is
Brendan Schaub,
one of the best podcasts, and he is one of my favorite comedians. And I saw that I'd actually seen you in some of his Instagram stuff a couple of years ago, and
Brand's the same guy off the stage and he is on the stage. He's so humble, so nice. And I just talked to him the other day, texted me the other day and says, "How's things in Vegas? You okay? You're being good?" I'm like, "I'm good. I'm good." Yeah. But he's busy shooting his new show, School. Yeah. He's from the Gold. He's brilliant.
Phenomenal. How did because I guess people that like listen to my podcast, so I do stand up back home. I'm based here, but kind of travel over to the States maybe 4 or 5 times a year. I was actually supposed to be in LA last week, and the night before I was supposed to go, I just thought, nah, I'll not risk it, because it was just the start of all the lockdown kind of thing, and the flight went ahead the night before. I was like, no, I'll just not chance it.
Well, LA and Vegas is a place to be for a comic, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, LA, I'll go out to do gigs, but then LA is the place where I'd be happy enough just watch it as well. Guys like Brian in the Comedy Store. Did you ever get to the Comedy Store when you were living in LA?
Yeah, been there. Yeah, I'm back and forth. I'm down in LA the other week now. So I'm here a week, LA week, here a week, there a week.
Yeah, so
I still train Brian down there. So I do.
Tell me what you're getting up to at the minute, because I do want to talk to you a bit about boxing, but you know, I am 31
Life
now.
after boxing. Life after boxing.
Life after boxing, because I'm 31 and I definitely remember when you would have been fighting world title fights. I just about remember that, but I was maybe, would that have been what, when?
Well, my
15,
daughter's
20 years
21,
ago?
so my daughter's 21. She remembers very little.
Yeah, no,
She was when she was 6 months old when she came to my first fight, or sorry, my when I fought Nazim Hamed. That was '98, and
yeah,
she was 6 months old.
because that was, I mean, we're sort of, there's so many boxers from home now. I mean,
It's
there
so
are
yeah,
so
back
many.
I know back in the '90s it was like me and Dave Boy, and that was about it. You know what I mean? It was like
And I only found out about him later. I only, like, in the last few years did a bit of reading about him, but you were kind of the boxing superstar then when there wasn't, you know, fighters over multiple divisions. Like, it was just kind of you out there.
yeah, it was different when I went to America, and it was like a shock to people then too. You're
How did,
leaving them behind. The media was wasn't good to me really.
did did you move to the States for work? Were you out there for training camps and then you just thought, I like it here, or what was the call to go over there?
No, the truth is, I wanted to stay back home. You know Barney Eastwood, do you?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He just
He
passed
just
away
passed
like
away.
last week.
Great.
Yeah.
Barney, I trained in Barney's gym when I was 14, 15, 16. My brother is 5 years older, and he was a pro, and I was amateur, and amateurs weren't allowed to train with pros back then. But I went down to his gym because it was actually warm. We had no heat in our gym. And I used to spar with Dave Boy and a guy called Paul Hodginson. He was a world champion, and Fidel Bassa, who beat Dave Boy in the world championship fights. And I was getting experience by doing that, and I was thankful that he let me do that. But I wanted to stay home. I was a home bird, and then after the Olympics in '92, I got our first silver medal from Ireland in 36 years, and I was waiting to go pro, but I cracked my cheekbone in 3 places here, and I busted a nerve right here. Down, I still have no feeling here.
Okay.
From my Olympic semi-final.
Right.
I still fought.
Worth it though for the medal?
It was. I fought the final with I had blood come out the corner of my eye from the busted nerve underneath my cheekbone, and I fought a close fight with a guy called Joel Casimir, who went on to become a Cuban, who went on to become a world champion. He's my friend who lives in Las Vegas. And
That's why boxers are a different breed, because you hear so many guys like that where you took a fight with an injury, or maybe you got a bad injury in a training camp.
yeah,
Sometimes, I
well,
mean, if I've gone over on my ankle, I won't do stand-up comedy.
well, boxers, if you go into a fight as a boxer and there's nothing wrong with you, think there's something wrong with you.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah,
But
yeah.
it's like don't make excuses. But I fought 5 fights at the Olympics in 2 weeks, and my last fight was against the Cuban for the gold medal, and that was my last fight. So the doctor looks at you the day off, and he touched your hand. He doesn't even. There's no X-rays or anything like that.
Yeah, yeah.
And is he okay? I'm like, yeah, good. So I couldn't feel anything here. My teeth were all numb here, and I'm not going to make excuses. It was a close fight. We fought a close fight against the Cuban, and as I say, we went on to become good friends to this day. And we both got inducted in the Nevada Hall of Fame together last year as well. So
Okay.
great guy. So after that, I was seen at the Olympics by promoters, and I say I wanted to stay home, but it didn't work out to stay in Belfast with Barney, and then some English promoters were interested, but the truth is I was broke. I was unemployed. Signed the Dole. The Dole took my money off me going to the Olympics because they said I wasn't fighting for the country. You couldn't do that today.
Well.
You couldn't do that today. Twice I went to the 88 and the 92, and they said, "Oh, you're not fighting for us." I'm like, "I'm fighting for the whole country."
Who
Well,
did you fight for at the Olympics?
I fought for Ireland.
Ah, okay. But so the basically the British government said
boxing is no. There was
no
the
brew.
people. I remember on the Dole office on the Shankill, where I went in. They said for 8 weeks I was going to be gone for training camp. Then went to Seoul, Korea for 4 weeks, and then went to Barcelona for 4 weeks in the '92 Olympics, and they took all my money away from me, and I was broke. And I'm representing the country north and south, and they couldn't do that today, but discrimination.
No,
But I still
think of the press
still,
attention that would get
I
today.
still think
Social media.
a lot of people don't know this, but the truth is it's discrimination. Even that was 32 years ago for the Seoul Olympics and 20 years ago for the Barcelona Olympics. That's discrimination, if you ask me.
Oh
You know what I
yeah,
mean?
for sure.
And because because anybody who knew sport back then, like rugby can become All Ireland. Boxing, when it goes to the Olympics, is All Ireland. When you go to the Commonwealth Games, you go for Northern Ireland. But as I say, my first Olympics, I was 17 years old, and I was broke, didn't have nothing. And I'm going to the Olympics as a broke kid and then all of a sudden you're on the Olympic team, they give you new tracksuits, new this, new that. I'm thinking, I get all this new stuff for free. That's fantastic. I had like a black top with the blue bottoms. It had nothing.
Yeah.
And you're getting all these sweatsuits and stuff to try to make weight. And I'm like, this is better. This is easier to make weight now. Where you're trying to put on 10 layers of clothes to make weight. I said the Commonwealth Games in 1990 and New Zealand, that was Northern Ireland. I got the gold, and then 92 again. I was going to go pro, but I stayed till the Olympics in 92. And then after that, I turned pro. And my manager, Matt Tinley, who was my promoter manager, was from here. And he watched me at the Olympics. And he took the time to come over and see me. He came to Dublin. I was at a function that night in Dublin. He came to meet me and offered me a big contract and television. And then he said to me 2 words that changed my mind forever. Was a guy called Eddie Futch. And he trained Joe Frazier back in the day, Ken Norton, Leon Spinks, 3 guys that beat Muhammad Ali actually.
Yeah.
And he was 82 years old, and he took me on. And for him to take me on was like going to the Premier League.
Right.
And I always say, they always say, I didn't want to leave. I wanted to stay in Belfast. And then all of a sudden, Eddie Futch was here in Vegas, and he was training Riddick Bowe at the time. He was a heavyweight champ of the world.
Yep, remember that.
And a guy called Mike McCallum, who was a 3-time world champion from Jamaica. So I'm coming over here to train with these guys just by watching these guys. And they all took me under their wing. Mike McCallum was one of the greatest guys I ever met. Since I met him day one, he's like, "Oh, you're my brother." He's Jamaican. He said, "You're McCallum, I'm McCullough. So we're brothers. We're brothers." And it made me feel at home. And then Eddie Futch, the stuff he was teaching me is just out of this world. And that's the reason why I left and came to Las Vegas for Eddie Futch. It's like somebody going from the Irish League to the Premier League.
Yeah, and the big call up, and I guess you.
Do you say no?
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, who's going to say no to that? But I think a lot of the time I hear about amateurs talking about the right time to make the step up to pros, and it seems like you that opportunity came around the right time, because I know people can leave it too late or go too early. I guess you can be a brilliant amateur, go to the pros, and it just doesn't work out.
No, when I was my first Olympics, I was 17 when I qualified, and just the Olympics were late that year. They're probably going to be later this year as well. They were like October. But I wanted to go pro after that, but I was a kid. I was just turning 18. I weighed 7.5 stone. I was about 5'3", about 5'4", and actually from 18 to 22, I grew like 3 inches or something. And I went from 7.5 stone to 8.5 stone, and had to cut to get down. You know what I mean? So I thought at 17, 18, 7.5 stone, I was a man. I was trying to grow this, and I couldn't even grow it.
Well, I'm 31, and I could get nowhere near
that. After 2 or 3 days, I had to take it all off.
Friends, let me interrupt the podcast very quickly with a very short message. We have charity sponsors now on the podcast, because I guess it's a bad time for businesses to sponsor podcasts. So we do a charity read. We've been doing that for the last few podcasts. We're sort of compiling a big list of everybody that gets in touch, and we're going to start rolling those out from probably Wednesday's podcast, Wednesday, Friday, all that kind of thing. Normal service will resume with those. If you have a charity or a fundraiser, or you just want to highlight something you think's really important, get in touch with us. teawithmepodcast@gmail.com. Whatever it is, we'll get through as many of them as possible. We'll do the reads if possible. Keep them coming in, and if I can give you any sort of platform, I'll do it. So that's teawithmepodcast@gmail.com. Back to the podcast with Wayne McCullough.
So I wanted to go pro then, and my amateur coach, Harry Robinson, who I was with for 14 years, he said, when you wait till next time, you'll be fully grown and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, no, I want to go pro. I just want to be a pro. I love the pros. I spar with them, and I love being a pro. But he was right, and I waited, and I matured, and then when I just turned 22, the Olympics came up again in 92, and I was ready. Getting the medal was like the contract for me. You know what I mean?
Of course.
Without a medal, it wouldn't have been a good contract. It would have been like fighting for, you've been fighting for peanuts, and you'd had to get a day job as well.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you couldn't really put in 100% of you working out like you do, like a Premier League guys are full time. You'd be a professional fighter to get to the world level. You got to be a full time pro.
In a way, it's the same with stand up. Like whenever I left, I was doing stand up at night and a sort of 9 to 5 day job. And the second I got out of that day job and went full time at this, you just have so much more focus. It's so much better. And
you have to be full time. Say Brian Callen is an actor, but he is acting stand up more or less. He's always funny in it.
Yeah,
and that can relate. Your stand up can lead to you know what I mean? You can lead to other jobs and then be in the entertainment, be in the television industry.
Of course, yeah.
Like Kevin Hart, you know what I mean? He's so funny.
I'd take a few of his money, you know what I mean? I'd take a little bit of that. What was the reaction being from the Shankill, living on the Shankill at that time, at the age of like 17, 18, the Olympics? Was it everywhere you went, were people stopping you for a chat, and was the community very much behind you?
They were, because I don't know why you know this, but in one of the first Olympics, I was asked to carry the Irish flag. Do you know that part?
No.
A little bit of politics.
Yeah.
I'm from the Shank. I was born and bred on Percy Street, actually on the Shankill Road. I was actually born at home because we didn't get the hospital in time. So I was actually born I think it's about 50 feet from the Peace Wall. But I was the youngest member of the team in '88. You know, I had the best record of the Irish boxing team. I had 12 knockouts in a row at international level, going up to the Olympics, and they asked me to carry the flag, and they said, "Oh, think about it," and I said, "No, I'll do it. I'll do it for sport."
Yep.
And back in '88, back home was like Beirut. You know what I mean? It was pretty. And I come from Shankill.
Politically. You're not thinking politically at that point. You're just there as a boxer.
I'm a sportsman, and my quote has always been, "I'm a sportsman, not a politician." But for them, as they come to me, I know they expected me to say no, and I know for a fact back then they were trying to make a political thing. If I'd have said no, imagine if I'd have said no.
Yeah.
But I'm willing to fight for the country, which I'm always proud of. I fought for Ireland about 40 times, and Ulster about 10 times. So, but I was proud of it. But I think they expected me to say no, because I've heard all these different stories about some of my coaches that were there. Oh, you shouldn't have did that. It was ridiculous. He carried that. I'm thinking, what?
Yeah.
One of my coaches said that. I'm like, didn't say it to me, but I heard it in the media. I'm like, I'm proud to fight for Ireland. I get to carry the flag into the opening ceremony of the Olympics in front of 2 billion people around the globe to show that Northern Ireland people can come together. Ireland people can come together. And I don't think I get the credit for doing it. Not that I wanted any credit, but I didn't even think about it. They said to me, I said, yeah, I'll do it. That's the way they're like, I think they were stunned that I was like so quick and reacting to doing it. Yeah. And I said, yeah, no problem. I'll do it. Do it for sport. I'm a sportsman, not a politician. And there's no problem at all.
And what was the backlash to that?
None.
Even back home, there was no?
No, but I read stories about my parents get hassled and stuff like that, but that was all lies. The truth was, it was all lies. I put it like this. I came back from the Olympics in '88. Didn't get a medal. I won like 2 fights. Didn't get a medal. Go to Highfield where I lived, and the Shankill Road Defenders flute band walked me down. I was in like a bus, down to the Shankill Rangers Supporters Club, and had a party for me. Is that bitterness?
No, well, no, definitely not.
Well, there you go. The Shankill Road Defenders flute band, and then Davy Larmer, who was in our gym, he won like a Commonwealth gold back in the '80s and stuff. He was a boxer, and he had the Shankill Road Supporters Club. Had a big party for me.
Were you getting support from both sides as well? Both sides.
I've always had support from both sides, because, you know, say I carried the flag in the Olympics and I carried the Commonwealth Games flag in the closing ceremony in 1990. So nobody even mentioned that one.
yeah, right.
The Ulster
by that point, they're like, you'll have the flag, trust me.
But I've had people come to me and said, "Did you carry the Irish flag?" I'm like, "Yeah." Like, I say, "Why?" I'm like, No, I just read something. I'm like,
and also,
okay.
Anybody else in that position that would give you grief for that or ask you why you did that, if you were like, do you want to carry the Irish flag at the Olympics? They would say, yes, I'll do it. You know, nobody would not do it.
No, it's the Olympics. It's the Olympics, and how many people get to go to the Olympics?
Yeah.
And I'm honoured to say I've heard other fighters. I'm not going to mention their names. Fighters over there who won gold medals for the Commonwealth Games and they're standing the anthem and say it's not their anthem and their flag.
Yeah.
Like seriously, imagine me standing there, representing Ireland and saying stuff like that. You know what I mean? So you should be honoured to be fighting for the country. You should be honoured to be there. And you know what? You don't have to like the flag, but you can respect the country. And I'm from Ireland. I'll say to people, I'm from Ireland. I'm Irish. I'm Northern Irish. It's called Northern Ireland for a reason.
Yeah. Was at around that time in like the late 80s, early 90s, when you were coming up, when you were maybe starting your pro career, was that closely followed by the press at home? Because I feel like now there's so much social media, so fighters that are still amateur or at the very start of their professional career get a lot of press. People want to read about it, hear about it. There's podcasts, there's all that kind of thing. Was it were you kind of always followed, or was it once you started really making a statement in the pros?
No, I was 14 when I won my first Irish championship. For like 3 years I was getting robbed every year, and I kept getting working hard every year. Couldn't even win the county anthems. Right. You had to win the county anthems, you had to win the Ulsters, then go to the All Irelands. And I get robbed every year, but it didn't put me off. Yeah. And then the first year I get to the All Irelands, 14, I won the Irish Championships every year until I left. You know what I mean? 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. And then I came here. And it didn't put a damper on me to stop boxing. I kept on going, kept on working harder, kept on running up at Glencairn, up the mountains. And I remember people used to walk their dogs up there, and they've seen me like after I made it, and they're like, now we see why you were doing all that hard work. I didn't have nothing. I had no money, had nothing. And I went to a YTP scheme for a year, did learning there, training there. I did a scheme job for a year. And so I learned some stuff if I needed it. But as 15 years old, I said to myself, I want to be the WBC champion of the world. I'm not disrespecting IBFs, WBOs, WBAs, but I wanted the belt that Muhammad Ali had, the WBC belt, and I got it. I'm the first Irish male ever to win a WBC belt. The only person who's did it since is Katie Taylor. She got a WBC belt, but I'm the first and still the only Irish man ever to win one in the history of the sport of boxing.
Let me interrupt the podcast very quickly with a very short message. We have charity sponsors now on the podcast because I guess it's a bad time for businesses to sponsor podcasts. So we do a charity read. We've been doing that for the last few podcasts. We're sort of compiling a big list of everybody that gets in touch, and we're going to start rolling those out from probably Wednesday's podcast, Wednesday, Friday, all that kind of thing. Normal service will resume with those. If you have a charity or a fundraiser, or you just want to highlight something you think's really important, get in touch with us. teawithmepodcast@gmail.com. Whatever it is, we'll get through as many of them as possible. We'll do the reads if possible. Keep them coming in, and if I can give you any sort of platform, I'll do it. So that's teawithmepodcast@gmail.com. Back to the podcast with Wayne McCullough. Fill in that in between for me, the point where you come up, you start your pro career. What's a moment where you go, this is going to happen for me? I mean, long-term success, big fights, fighting in big venues. Was there a particular turning point or a particular win where you went, yeah, this is me, sort of?
Yeah, well, the truth is, I'm going to get another cup of tea here, by the way. Don't worry.
It's encouraged.
Like, at 15, I remember my friends back home. I said to them, I'm going to the Olympics. I'm going to go to the Olympics and get a medal. Maybe I said it may not be my first or maybe my second Olympics, and they all looked at me. But then what? They knew I trained hard even as a 15, 16-year-old. And a couple of my friends are, what'd you say? They're in the paramilitaries.
In the, you might call them the adult scouts.
Yeah, but these guys to this day respect me because some people don't have a choice. You know what I mean?
Well,
when you grow up in West Belfast, either Protestant or Catholic, you don't have a choice. The choice is the lights go out in winter time at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. It's pitch black almost. And what do? There's nothing to do. You get into trouble, or you do this or do that, and you maybe sign your life away and sign up with an organization or something. And nobody's ever disrespected me that way. They know what I did, and I've always did it for everybody. And unfortunately, other people don't have a choice. But I wanted to be a boxer at 15. I wanted to be champion of the world. And I remember standing at the front door. I'm proud of where I come from. I used to stand at the front door, and I used to say to myself, there's got to be something better than this. Because I just thought all the fighting and the shooting and the bombs. And I seen it. I seen people being shot. I seen bombs going off and heard bombs going off all the time. And I just thought, can we not get on with each other?
Yeah.
And it was hard. And I understand there's bitterness on both sides. I know that. There'll always be bitterness on both sides. And unfortunately, I'd say 90% of people don't mind living together. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's, I mean, you must like it when you hear news like a couple of months ago, they said they're going to start to lower the peace walls just by a bit, but things like
Listen
that.
to me, that peace wall, I said to somebody about 2 years ago, how come in 89 they took down the Berlin Wall, but they won't take down the peace wall? And somebody said to me, it's a tourist trap. It's a tourist trap.
1,000%. 1,000%.
You know what? I'd be the first one to stand up and say, if there's real peace, take the wall down. Because the wall, I was born in Percy Street, where the wall was erected down the bottom of the street. That street used to be, people used to live in the same street. So when that wall comes down, if there's a Catholic on one side close to the wall when it comes down, and a Protestant living on the other side of the wall close to the wall, are they going to kill each other? Are they going to want to live together?
Yeah.
I think they'll want to live together. I really do. I really think.
About the tourist thing, I mean, that's bang on. Like, I did the big bus, like the big red buster. I had a few mates that had never seen Belfast before. I took them on that, and I was like, I don't know if I'll find this interesting because I thought I knew everything, but I learned a lot on it. But whenever it went down the Peace Wall, Townsend Street, that's where the Peace Wall is? Yeah.
It's right down. It's actually they say it was higher than the Berlin Wall and longer.
It honestly felt like you were the way people were watching it. It felt like the way you look at enclosures in the zoo. The way people were taking photos for tourists. The way they were looking.
They close the gates up wide in Townsend. They close the gates up at night, so you're locked up. But this is my problem. How come rich people always live together, and there was no walls separating?
Yeah. No, you're right.
The working class people. My friends over here. A guy was called Romulo Fusco. He used to have fish and chip restaurants back home. He's dead now. The Fuscos.
Yeah. Well, they were called the fish and chips.
Yeah, his two sons. They've got ice cream as well. His two sons, Frank and Tony, are in their 60s, and they've lived here for like 40 years. But he spent Romulo. He had a Protestant wife, but he spent more time on the Shankill Road because he's a boxer as well. He spent more time socializing on the Shankill Road because he said everybody always got together. The working class people, the ones who always hung out with each other, got together. And you know what? I grew up in the 80s, 90s. I have a good friend from the Falls Road. We used to hang out together. So, and then all of a sudden, I say in 69, before I was born, they put the wall down to separate them working class people who socialize together. So what do they do? Blame the working class people, but the rich people can live together up in Cultraw or up in, wherever the fancy area is.
Yeah.
So how come they can live next door to each other and we couldn't? We could. And then when I said the Americans were like, what do you mean the rich people weren't separate? I'm like, no, they lived next door to each other.
Yeah.
They put the wall down the working class neighborhood and that was it. I'm like, what? I'm like, yes. And the Americans don't understand. They always say, you get the English out. I said, there's no English there.
Yeah.
I said, it's like, I say Scotland, Wales, England and Northern Ireland are part of the United Kingdom. They're part of the British. Like Britain owned 3/4 of the world at one time, so it was hard for the Americans to get in their head. They just thought, get the British out, get the English out, get the British out. I said, no, Northern Ireland's British. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, it's under UK rule. I said, it's under United Kingdom. Do we want it? Probably yes. Do we want it? Not want it? No, we don't know. People do want it. People don't want it. But I think it's better off just left the way it was.
Yeah.
So it's hard to explain that to somebody, and I don't explain to anybody if I'm only going to see them for 5 minutes. I'm not going to explain all that stuff.
But I
You know
mean,
what I mean?
sometimes I get confused when I'm explaining it to people as well. Like you say, Americans, you know, they're like, "What is the
But
political situation?" I'm like, "Good question. I don't know if people
good
know, but
question. But I'd be the first, at least I'd be the first one to stand up and say, take the wall down. Take the wall down. And I've been saying it for years. The wall, if there's real peace in Northern Ireland, take the wall down.
I mean, boxing seems to be something that totally cuts through religion. Like
Always did.
anytime you hear boxers locally talking about the way they grew up, the people they trained with, it was always cross community and a bit like. So
Always.
I played football, still do. That's my sport, and it was never an issue. Any team you played for was basically cross community, but you wouldn't even have thought of it as that. You know,
Well, I
technically,
was football like you too. I played football through secondary school, high school, and I loved it. I wanted to be a football player. I did
yeah.
when I was really young. I was good at it, but it wasn't good enough.
Who were
You know
you
what I mean?
thinking? Who would you have played for if you were like running about the
Well, of course,
playground?
up the street where my wife comes from was Geordie Best. You know what I mean? It was like, and he was sort of before, and he was like 60s and stuff. But everybody wanted to be Geordie Best. You know what I mean? And of course, my team is Liverpool.
Right. Okay. I'm
You
United,
have to
so
30. I know 30 years. We have to get. They have to give it to us this year. The season
even
has to start.
even begrudgingly, I think you gotta just give them it. You gotta give them it.
I know. Well, I think we've played so well. You know what I mean, but back in the day, I had the Ray Clemens and Bruce and Bruce Galbraith after that. I love goalkeeper. I was a goalkeeper for the school in primary school. Believe it or not, I'm 5'6", but I was good with my hands.
Good hands.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
then with Kenny Dalglish and all that was the old school back in the day, and that was my team, and I've always supported them. Most of my friends were 1 week of this, and then the next week of that. I was Liverpool my whole life.
Yeah.
It's been 30 years since we won the league, so.
I
But
feel
I have
like
to give it to. They have to finish it. No, hopefully they finish. There's only a few games to go anyway.
I feel like Liverpool fans will be the number one contributors to coronavirus. Trying to get a vaccination for it. I feel like Liverpool fans will fund that just so we can get the
No,
Premiership back up and
I
running.
think Klopp he's been outstanding. The guy,
He's great. Yeah,
if
I'm
he
very
loses,
jealous of him.
no, but if he loses, he's very respectful. He's not,
He is. Yeah.
and if he wins, he's respectful, and that's good. Brendan Rodgers, Brendan Rodgers he wasn't the greatest for us. You know what I mean?
I think Brendan Rodgers was probably still learning. That was the problem.
Yes,
He's a better manager now, but
he's definitely.
he was still kind of raw when he was with you.
No, you have to put a team together.
See when you do get home, Wayne, is it like sorry, I know home is kind of American now, but whenever you get back to Belfast, do you have like a go-to thing? Like, is there a cafe you like to go to? Is there a place you go for straight away?
Soda bread.
Just soda bread?
I love you can buy the stuff over here, and I like chocolate and biscuits and stuff. We'll call them cookies. They call them cookies over here.
Yeah.
We call them biscuits, but biscuits over here are scones.
And cookies can be biscuits here as well. So
so that's weird.
Yeah.
But anytime anybody comes over here, that's like a whole suitcase full of chocolate and pat noodle. My daughter was born here, but she loves pat noodle.
Right.
And the potato cheese onion, of course.
Unbelievable.
And of course the tea bags, but that never changed. The food, the chocolate and the candy, they call it candy over here, that it's way better back home. And my American friends who come over there for my fights and stuff, they come over and they agree with me. They think the chocolate's way better, the chips are way better. So
the chips it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, the food, they're not too. They say the food there's a lot of grease in the fish and chip and all. I'm like, that's normal, but it's normal.
Yeah, that's the way it is.
They can't believe that you get, like in most hotels, you get your dinner. It's like you get about 3 different types of potatoes with it.
Yeah. Oh well, and also an Ulster fry is just 12 different types of bread. With a
they love that. They love that too. I would say, but say it took us years to get used to the American food. It was different. Even like chicken and beef and all. It just tastes a little bit different. And then your taste buds change. You know what I mean? And then you get it's.
Do you have any mates from Northern Ireland out there in the States?
It took me about 3 years before I could settle down. My wife, she was 19, and I was just turned 22, and we didn't know one person in the whole country. I came over here I had a 3-year contract, thinking I'm going home. I'm going to go back home, get a gym, get my house, and that's me. I'm done. 3 years. And then as you're getting older, you go back and forward. The first 2 years, I spent more time in Belfast. I came here in February '93, and then by June I was fighting in Belfast. September I fought in Dublin. but I spent most of my time over there.
Yep.
But about a year and a half after I was here, I was at the gym training, and a guy walks over to me and says, "That guy speaks like you." I'm like, what? Romulo Fusco, Romulo, the guy I told you about.
Yes.
And he was a boxer. He was in the gym, and I'm like, oh. And the funny thing is, we just bought our first house about 8 miles from the Las Vegas Strip, just to get away from the Las Vegas Strip.
Yep.
And he lived about a mile around the corner.
Unbelievable.
And every Saturday night, he made fish and chips at home. We went for fish and chips, and he passed away when he was 79 years old. So the two sons are in their 60s, but he never left the recipe. And his chip, he was back in the day, was doing thousands of every month, like a lot of money back in the 50s and 60s.
Oh, it's famous. Yeah.
But, and he was supposed to leave. He was on his way to Italy, flew on his way to Italy at 79, fell asleep, never woke up again. Good health, he worked out and stuff.
Yeah.
But he was supposed to leave the recipe to my wife.
Oh, no.
He wasn't going to leave it to his two sons. He was going to leave it to my wife. And he didn't leave it. It's all in the batter, you know what I mean?
I like to think if he had, you and your wife would have opened up a wee Fusco's Chippy on the Las Vegas Strip.
The truth is, Gordon Ramsay's got one on the Strip.
Yeah.
And I know Gordon Ramsay really well. He's a good guy, but it's like $15 fish and chips.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I went to Vegas on my honeymoon last summer. It's great. I mean,
where'd you stay?
We stayed in the area.
Oh yes, that's all. That place is sensational. City,
total
that
shutdown
place.
now, I guess.
Yeah, the whole strip's off. The lights were some of the lights were on this morning. I was at the airport this morning dropping off my nephew. He's been trying to get out for a week.
Oh, okay.
But most of the lights are off in the strip. The hotels are closed.
Area was great. It was great when we were there. Like really,
it's
really
beautiful.
Good spot.
That's called City Center. It's like a city inside the city.
Yeah, but it was just. Sorry, go ahead. Oh, I was going to say the heat.
when were you there? When were you there?
We were there in last July. It was just too hot. You know what I mean? It was
something on your head.
I know.
But a lot of people have to go in June, July because that's their holidays.
Yeah, that's why we went. My wife's a teacher.
The first year I was here, I was home. June I was mostly home. August I was home. It was too hot. You know what I mean? The first year was too hot.
Yeah.
And it was just crazy. The heat. I got the 119 degrees or something.
Yeah.
And I was. But now I can go out running. I could go outside and run 100 degrees, no problem.
You're just acclimatized now.
I'd drop dead. But your blood gets really, really thinned.
Right.
When it gets to 60 degrees now, you're like, oh, I'm cold and freezing.
Yeah.
And so it's funny.
I just want to ask you finally what life after boxing is now. We talked about it like a bit earlier, but are you just training a range of people at the minute, from people that just do boxing as a hobby to actual fighters, people that are competing, or what's going on?
Well, I've trained a few fighters since like 2006. My first pro was Alex Arthur from Scotland. He actually won the super featherweight WBO belt. So with me, so I had him first. He came over here and trained, and then I had two Mexican guys. One fought for a championship and lost, and the other one didn't. And then they're retired now too. But I trained the heavyweight up until last year. Actually, let's just say he wanted to do his own road show.
Yeah, I get
you. And he took a fight on his own and he got knocked out. I wasn't with him. He got knocked out cold.
Right.
And my coach was the type of guy that you either listen to me to walk out the front door. It's like Klopp with Liverpool. You listen to me or go somewhere else.
Yeah.
You have to listen. You have a coach for a reason.
Of course.
And Eddie Fudge, Eddie trained 20 world champions total. And say that you're talking, back to the day of Joe Frazier and Ken Norton, where they're back in the 60s and 70s, who beat Muhammad Ali. And then the modern day was me, and he had, Mike McCullough, Montel Griffin, world champions. And I was his last world champion and the only one he gave a letter to, actually, signed letter to be a coach someday. Because I was close to him until he passed away. He was 90 years old when he passed away.
Incredible.
So, but he was in, it's hard to describe him. You have to sit down and talk to you for about 5 hours, because he used to sit down and talk to me about, he was born in like 1912, back in the 30s, 40s, when he's black guy. He struggled to get one fighter and nobody would come to him, and because they wanted to do their own show, you know what I mean?
Yes.
And then when he started telling people and get successful, then all of a sudden he was just swamped and he had to get like 4 or 5 assistants. But so I want to be like him, you know what I mean? I don't train people the way I fought. And Eddie was the same way. I say Montel Griffin, the world champion, Mike McCallum, Riddick Bowe, and me were all around in the camp together when I came here. And we all had different styles. You know, one was a boxer, one was defensive, I was aggressive. You know, if you train everybody the exact same way, then we're all different. You know, that's why you have different players on the football team, you know what I mean? Defenders, forwards, strikers, goalkeepers. So you have to be different, and I do that. And my number one thing I teach is defense.
Yep.
I send a like American way defense.
Defense, yeah. I've been watching a lot of American football documentaries, so I would also probably say defense at the minute.
That's okay. I'm okay with that. No, so I teach a lot of defense and say, right now I'm training about 5 or 6 amateurs who are going to have their first fights in May. Well, probably not May now because of what's going on.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be in LA.
They're fighting over Skype.
I know it's too funny. 4 guys and 1 girl, and then I don't have any pros at the minute, but I say I train from kids from 4 years old up. I'm any age actually. It started. My first kid was 4 years old. Now he's 7, and up till my oldest client right now is 73 years old. Who is a pilot who could knock anybody's head off the shoulders.
Well, that answers that question. I was going to wrap it up by saying next time I make it out to Vegas, I'd love to do a session with you. I've never really been in the ring before, and I was going to say, let me get it on with that 73-year-old. But if he's got something about him, don't let me fight him because I can't fight.
Oh, he can fight, but even the girls I have can fight.
I'll fight the 7-year-old. I'll fight the 7-year-old.
He can fight too. It's actually
all right. Maybe I'll just watch.
No, not name drama. You know Freddie Prinze Jr. Do you?
Yeah. Buffy. He was in Buffy the Vampire. Sarah Michelle.
And Sarah Michelle.
Yeah.
I've been training Freddie, and I trained Sarah, and I trained their kids,
okay.
Rocky, and their kids, their daughter Charlotte, who's 9. I train them every week.
Incredible.
I've been training for Freddie for 5 years, Joe. About 5 years. My wife just came in there. 5 years. So I teach them how to fight too, and I usually train them at their gym or go to his house.
Right. So he has like a gym in his house. Well, I guess everybody does there.
But he comes to the gym, but recently I went to his house because the kids were busy at school, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I just went into his backyard and trained them there. But Freddie can fight too. I want Freddie and Brian Campbell to do an exhibition charity function, and they're talking about it.
Yes.
I tried to get them together, but they would, because they're about the same size, weigh about the same as well, about 100, but 11 stone each. And I think it'll be good. They raise money for charity, especially after what's happening right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because
this could be a push to get this done.
We've been talking about comedians boxing locally in Belfast for years. You know, should we book the Ulster Hall and do like a charity boxing night? If we ever get that arranged, you and I are going to have to Skype.
But I tell you what, Brian Callan can really fight.
Oh yeah. I mean, I know that his kind of character is to like, you know, always make fun of himself, but you can like for his age, he's in great shape.
He's got great defense. He's 52 years old. He's got great defense. He moves around. He can hit crack hard, and he really is. I'm not just saying it. Him and Freddie are both. I would put them in the ring with the spar with pros and everything.
Yeah,
that's what they did. The spar with pros, and the pros didn't take it easy on them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so they know what they're doing.
Yeah,
and I teach people to get in the ring and know what they're doing. You know what I mean? Whether you're getting there for fun, and they're never going to fight. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course.
Like the charity match you could do, but they're never going to fight. But can they fight? Yeah.
Yeah.
Brian Callan's a good comedian, great comedian.
Phenomenal.
But he can fight like a mother hubbard.
Honestly, one of my favorites. He's one of my favorites. So funny. That's good.
No, he's brilliant. He's a funny guy. He's brilliant. And I'd do anything for him. No, I mean, I'd do anything for him.
Wayne, cheers for doing this podcast. I really appreciate it. Taking a bit of
sitting there having a cup of tea, just
a bit of time.
Sitting like this, like I'm smart, thinking like this.
There we have it, Sippers, the Tea With Me podcast episode with Wayne McCullough. What a gentleman, you know, really, really nice guy. Wayne was just really sound about doing the podcast as well. Like, you can definitely see and hear whenever I say, you know, I do stand-up, and he's like, oh, you stand-up? You can definitely hear me go, he doesn't know who I am. You know, there's definitely that moment, but it's all good. You know what I mean? It's all good, because I probably should have explained before the podcast, hey, this is who I am. But because Wayne's from Northern Ireland. I went, he'll know, you know, and it turns out he didn't. And experiences like that keep your feet in the ground. They keep your feet in the ground. Wayne was brilliant. Real nice guy to chat to, and actually when the podcast finished, we just ended up like, you know, chatting a bit after it. And he's somebody I think I'll keep in touch with. Definitely next time I'm in the States doing shows, be good to do some sort of training session with him, as long as I pointed out, as it's fighting children or the elderly. Either or, I'd be happy. I'd fancy my chances. But Wayne was great, and I want to get that sort of diverse lineup of guests on the podcast, whether they're from sport or TV or honestly whatever. Like before lockdown, our plan was to get a load of professors on, you know, and educate me about some stuff that I don't really know about, like, I don't know, space and exotic animals. I mean, I've got Tiger King for that. That's a fair point. But we're going to get more people on, and we always want to hear from the listeners who you think would be a good guest. So you can leave a comment on if you're watching this on the YouTube, or get in touch with me on Twitter or whatever, and we'll try, because I'm asking people, and pretty much everyone's like, yeah, all right. One of my favorite comedians, Todd Barry, has agreed to do the podcast. I'm recording that tomorrow. All being well, you know, things can change, but I'm really, really looking forward to that. We've got an episode with JC Stewart coming out next week. JC is a singer-songwriter, and a damn good one as well. He's from Macrofelt, and he's blowing up at the minute. He's got himself a real good record deal. He's on pretty much every list that's out at the minute of, like, you know, 10 artists to watch or 5 people to keep your eye on. And that's like worldwide, you know. So he's a lovely guy. I think people will really, really take to him on the podcast, whether you are just finding out about him or you like his music and you know him. He writes with Lewis Capaldi, nearly wrote for Westlife, as we talk about. But again, it's just a nice, enjoyable chat. Then I'm going to do an episode by myself during the week as well. Probably the Friday one, I'll maybe just do solo, and we'll get into my head and see what's happening, because things are happening. DIY mainly. But I'll be doing listeners' questions as well, because I want to start interacting again with all you guys. I do want to do listeners' questions when I have a guest on, but it's time management. You know, I only want to keep people on for like 45 minutes during an interview, and I don't want to be like 40 minutes in and they're making a great point and I go, I'm going to have to stop you there. Somebody wants to know. Like, I don't want to have the Dalai Lama on, which probably will happen, and I don't want to have to stop and go, mate, Chris and Cullybacky wants to know, would you rather have a hand permanently stuck in your forehead or a toe under your nose? What would you prefer, though? You know? So we'll do an episode with just me during the week, and we'll do listeners' questions. And mentioned earlier, the podcast got into the top 40 of the UK podcast charts. That's really incredible. I didn't ever think that would happen, and I sort of say it every week at the end of a podcast, but I say it because I mean it. I'm loving doing this podcast. I'm really, really enjoying it. I think this lockdown period, while there's obviously so many terrible aspects to it, personally, it's really reconnected me. And that's such a wanker thing to say, but it's really reconnected me with all the stuff I'm doing, you know, in terms of making videos, writing, podcasts, all that kind of thing. I'm just like properly back into everything, and I thought I was massively enthusiastic and driven before, and it's just taken this to kind of make me look at it all and go, yeah, I could step it up a wee bit. I could work harder here, or I could do this instead of doing that. And the people that sent messages during the week about the Jimmy Dornan episode of the podcast and said they enjoyed it, that means a lot. So thank you very much. I'm going to plug a couple of really quick things. Number one is the Boytown podcast that I do with Dave Elliott every Thursday. That goes out on SoundCloud and the Boytown podcast YouTube channel. Me and Dave talking a bit of shit together. We've been doing this podcast for years, and it continues to like evolve, and and it's brilliant. And Dave has a podcast called the Sly Guy Podcast as well on SoundCloud and Apple Podcasts. You've got the General Banter Podcast. You've got Dirt Civil, Deck Chair and Yums, Rory Woods, Woodstock Podcast is going as well, and just loads of good local podcasts. So if you listen to this, if you listen to Boytown, and you want some more of that, there's really good podcasts out there, so you can check all those out. It's a good time for local podcasts at the minute. I've rambled on for probably too long, but Apple Podcasts, if you can rate and review this podcast, if you have time, if you fancy that, that'd be great. And the Patreon, as always, is patreon.com/teawithmepodcast. You want to get in touch with us, teawithmepodcast@gmail.com. Really excited about the episodes we've got coming up. And thanks for listening or watching today. See you later.